ko Pini Henarei. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe. Kia ora, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity to take this call. Seeing as this is the first time I'm speaking in the House for 2015, can I echo the sentiments heaped upon yourself and your colleagues and wish you and all of us indeed in the House a happy new year and a prosperous new year. Mr. Speaker, it's my pleasure to speak on the Coroners Amendment Bill first reading. It's clear, and my colleague Jacinda Ardern has echoed has mentioned the Labour Party's support for this bill, and it's proceeding on to the Select Committee stage. I'd also like to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank the former Chief Coroner for his hard work in 2006. We understand recently the former Chief Coroner has moved on, and we wish him all the best in his work in the field of ACC. Can I also, in that vein, that was Judge Neil McLean. Can I also, in that vein, too, congratulate the Labour government, Helen Clark in particular, in 2006, who allowed for the Coroner's Bill to enter into this House, set up the Coroner's Office, and of course Judge McLean being the first Chief Coroner appointed to that office. I'd just like to take the time to highlight that fact. And of course we move on to the amendment bill we're discussing here today. I've already mentioned that we support this bill moving on into the Select Committee stage. And I want to point out some things within the bill, Mr. Speaker, especially around some of the amendments that are being proposed, strengthening the coroner's recommendations. Mr. Speaker, I'm reminded of other such arbitrary groups and boards, such as such as the Waitangi Tribunal, whose recommendations, while well researched and well founded, often fall on deaf ears. And we know that that particular tribunal is considered often a toothless lion. And I wonder, and I'd hate to see the same happen to the Coroner's Office. I'd hate to see that the important recommendations that the coroners make after their inquiries, the important recommendations they make fall on deaf ears. And I want to highlight a particular case, if I can, Mr. Speaker, of a recent case of two young people who passed away sadly by inhaling butane, a 19-year-old and a 12-year-old. One of the recommendations of the Coroner's Office was, and I quote, determining whether there needs to be support for Māori communities to develop their own solutions to the problems of the abuse of butane and other volatile substances. This is because the statistics show that 30 out of the 63 butane-related deaths between 2000 and 2012 were people of Māori ethnicity. Now, I'm not too sure whether or not that recommendation was taken seriously, but I'd like to think that these types of amendments will allow for those recommendations to have some real teeth so that we can stop the sad and tragic cases I've just pointed it out around the inhaling of volatile substances. That's just one particular case, Mr. Speaker. So I support the amendments being proposed to strengthen the recommendations of the coroner, but I think they just don't go quite far enough. And I look forward to hearing some of the submissions at the Select Committee stage from interested parties, because I feel that these particular amendments just stop before the try line, and we want to see that the recommendations gain a bit more mana. We want to see that the proposed streamlined processing and administration of particular inquiries in the Coroner's Office put people and families at the forefront of their thoughts. I raise that point, Mr. Speaker, because with having had experience with such tragic cases, sadly a lot of Māori tūpāpaku, or loved ones who have passed on, Mr. Speaker, end up travelling very far distances for autopsy. If, for instance, in Kaitaia, they pass away, too often the tūpāpaku is being sent to Auckland. What needs to be done is done there. By the time the tūpāpaku makes its way home, 2 days has passed. Now, in Māori terms, and in tikanga and our custom, that isn't a very good thing, Mr. Speaker. So when we make recommendations, and the recommendations made in this amendment, the Coroners Amendment Bill, I'd like to think that people and loved ones and pragmatism are put to the forefront of all submissions put forward towards the Amendment Bill, Mr. Speaker. I want to carry on around the proposed improvement of the coronial system. The Coroner's Office is already extremely overworked. I say this from some indirect experience. The coroner for the far north is a relative of mine, and discussions with him point out that he is extremely overworked. He points out to me also that there are, Mr. Speaker, that there are many cases that are just sitting gathering dust on in particular places in his office because he is overworked at this point in time. So I'd like to think that the proposed amendments in the Coroner's Amendments Bill will allow not for just a streamlined process, but for more resourcing. More resourcing to allow a streamlined process of the Coroner's Office and the important work that they do. Mr. Speaker, the hope is that the recommendations will indeed ease the workload, as I've already spoken about, and will also provide the tools to the coroner and to the Coroner's Office. Now, we've heard some some discussion on this bill already from the previous two speakers around pragmatic solutions. Now, I want to pick up the case around self-inflicted deaths. Now, we do know that there needs to be a responsibility around the open publication of the way that people who sadly suffer that fate pass away, for fear that others may copy the person who has passed away. Now, I support that, but I wonder, Mr. Speaker, if much thought was given to particular cases in the far north, in particular at Kāmoa High School, where there was a suicide ring or a suicide pact. Now, no form of silencing through publication of self-inflicted deaths will stop the types of ring and pact mentality that sadly afflict our youth today when we talk of self-inflicted deaths. Now, I wonder if there could be any more thought or recommendations, and I look forward to submissions on those particular instances, because it's not just about the publication of names, it's about dealing with the issue itself. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to hearing submissions, not just from interested organisations in this particular amendment bill, but I would encourage families who have experienced the coronial process in the past to come forward and share their experiences in the hope that it can best inform the amendments that are being proposed in this bill. Mr. Speaker, I've already mentioned that we, the Labour Party, are supporting this amendment bill moving forward and going into the select committee stage, of which I am a member of, and I look forward to hearing those submissions, and thank you for your time. Tēnā tātou katoa.
The Honourable Chester Borrows.